guys, it's Cece, and this is my June wrap-up. So, in June, I did really great. I read a lot of books. I'm pretty proud of what I got done. I'm very happy. In the month of June, I read 8 books and 3 graphic novels, I guess. They're like comic bind-ups, so we're gonna go with graphic novels. So we're just gonna jump right in, because I have a lot of books to cover. So at the beginning of the June... So at the beginning of June, I participated in a readathon, and so I read these first 3 books all during the readathon, and then in the middle of the month, I got a little slumpy for reasons. But at the beginning of the month, I started with Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 3rd book in the Throne of Glass series, and this was the best one yet. Heir of Fire was absolutely amazing. You get so much character development in this book, it is insane. I almost wanted to do a review, and then that didn't happen. Anyway, Celaena goes through so much in this book. Like, legitimately, I loved it. I loved her character development from book 1 so much. I cannot wait to see what she goes through, like, in these next 3 books, because she's already come so far as a character. Also, I really liked how this book was split between places this time. I liked that everyone wasn't in one place dealing with one thing. There were 3? I believe there are 3 different storylines going on simultaneously, and I really liked all of them, and also the friendship. The friendship Celaena and, let's go with unnamed character because it's a spoiler, is so amazing. I was like crying at the end because I was like, I can't believe how amazing this friendship is being written right now. This book, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I want Queen of Shadows so much I can taste it. And this book was so good. The next book that I read in June was Will Grayson by John Green and David Levithan. This book, it was good. This is a book about 2 boys named Will Grayson, and they're each pretty different people, and then one day through a series of circumstances they happen to meet in a very odd place, and they really affect each other's lives. And it is also about one of the Will Grayson's friends, whose name is Tiny. He is a huge part of this book. But I really liked this book. I liked some of the issues it addressed. I really liked how they sort of dealt with Tiny at the end. I thought that was really cool. I thought it was very sweet. I saw it coming a teeny bit, but I still thought it was really cool. But yeah, I think this book had some sweet moments. That's pretty much what I can give it. I read it really quickly, and I thought it was sweet. And obviously, I liked it because I marked a few pages here of stuff that I liked. But this is a pretty good book. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Next in June, I read The Martian by Andy Weir. I really, really liked this book. The Martian was amazing. It is about a man, and his name is Mark Watney, and he and a bunch of people go to Mars on like a space mission, and then something goes terribly wrong, and somehow he is left behind on Mars, and everyone thinks he's dead, but he's not dead, and now he has to survive alone on Mars. This book is a survival story, but it's also hilarious because it's told from Mark's point of view through like his logs, I think, that he leaves, and he has such like this gallows sense of humor. He's got this really dark humor that's so funny. I wish I could redo the first line, but I'm not gonna do that. It has an excellent first line. This book was funny and smart and really fast-paced. This book was really, really great. I'm curious about the movie. I don't know about the trailer yet. We'll see. But that's coming out in November. And I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next in June, actually I started a book and didn't finish it. I couldn't get myself to finish On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Sorry guys. Sold it back to the store. Got a new book for the same price. Just didn't happen. But the 4th book that I read in June was Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is one of the books that got me a little slumpy, because here's the thing, I enjoy historical fiction, I do. And whenever I'm reading historical fiction, my brain logically goes, wow, this is a well-written book, and I appreciate that. But I just can never connect. I have such a hard time connecting to characters, and I have such a hard time reading them quickly, and I wanted so very badly to love this book, but I didn't love it. This book is about a boy named Daniel who works with his father in an antique bookshop, and when he's very young, he is taken to a place called the Cemetery of Forgotten Books, and his father tells him to pick one book that he must like watch over and protect, and he ends up picking this book by this author, and when he tries to find out who the author is later, it turns out that someone has been systematically destroying all of that author's books, and he has the only remaining copy of the book called Shadow of the Wind. This is a suspense historical fiction novel. It takes place in Barcelona, starting in the 1940s, and it continues on for a number of years. I enjoyed some of the suspense. I liked Daniel a little. I thought some of his girl crazy stuff was a bit annoying. I thought this was a beautifully written book. I was conscious of how beautiful the prose was and how nice it sounded. I just couldn't connect to it, so I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. Sorry, I really wanted to love this. Next, in June, I read one of my 3 graphic novel, comics, whatever, and that was the first issue of Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 8. It is called The Long Way Home by Joss Whedon, and I believe illustrated by George Jeanty. This one was really fun. I enjoyed getting back into Buffy. I finished watching Buffy in December, and I've been curious about getting into the comics because I've heard mixed things, and then I found out that my library has all of Season 8, and so I decided I was going to start reading them. This was good. It was fun to get back into it. Also, I appreciate that it picked up some of the threads that were left off in the spin-off show Angel. They kept referencing what Buffy was doing, and it was really confusing, and they explained all of that within the first couple of pages of this, and I was like, oh, that's a relief, because I didn't know what Angel was doing. I really enjoyed this, actually, and enough that I continued on with the other one, so I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Next, in June, I picked up one of my favorites this month, and that was Almost Like Being in Love by Steve Kluger. I did a review of this book, which you can click here to view, so I won't talk a ton about it because you can go watch my whole review of it, even though it has terrible lighting because I filmed it in like the middle of the night for some reason. This is an LGBT book that I read at a very good time in June because it was just before the Supreme Court decision, so it was very cool that I got to have this finished reading right then because like it was really cool. This book takes place between two different times, 1978 and 1998, and it is about these 2 boys, Travis and Craig, and they met in high school, and then they fell in love, and then they parted ways, and then 20 years after they part ways, one of them, Travis, wakes up and realizes that the reason none of his relationships have worked out for 20 years is that he is still in love with Craig. And so he goes on this crazy adventure because he has to win Craig back. And at the same time, Craig is doing other stuff. But he is slowly becoming aware that, like, Travis is coming towards him, so it's not just like a, and I'm here and I love you kind of thing. Like, it's kind of a build. This book is adorable. I loved this book. I read it with a grin for like 3 days. It took me 3 days to read it, and I just smiled the whole time. And again, you can just go click on the review to hear more about it. But I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next, in June, because again I was feeling a little bit slumpy, a little bit in the middle here, I picked up another of the Buffy comics, issue 2. This one is called No Future for You, and this one, there's one bit written by Joss Whedon, but the rest is written by Brian K. Vaughan, still illustrated by the same guy. I did not enjoy this one as much. Season 8 is seeming a little darker and a little drearier than, I mean, the show is a little dark and dreary once you get to the end, but I needed some lightness, and this had stuff with Faith in it and Giles, and I'm still really disappointed with what they did with Giles on the show, so I didn't love reading this one as much. It felt kind of weird and disjointed, so I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. Next, in June, I read a great book. I read The Merciless by Danielle Vega. Again, I will turn it to the light so you can see the really cool cover. This book caught my eye because of how beautiful it is. I heard about it on Raylene's channel because she really likes it, and I knew it was really dark, and that was pretty much all I knew going into it. This is a book about, let's see, it is about this new girl who moves into town. Her name is Sophia, and she meets these popular girls who tell her that they think this girl they used to be friends with is possessed, and they have to do an exorcism. But when they start to do the exorcism, Sophia thinks it's more like torture than an exorcism. And everyone thinks this girl is a demon, and she's just being tortured. And it's really, really dark, but it is fantastic. I want to do a review of this book. I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I think I might do one sometime this week, because I really enjoyed this book and sort of the vibe it had going on. Like, I was picking up on stuff. It was really, really cool. And I love this beautiful bright cover with such a dark subject matter. Like, I don't get scared during books. I generally don't. But when I read this book, at the very end, I turned on some creepy music and I shut the blinds and I like got all in the mood, and I was like holding it away from me because I was frightened of the book, and that doesn't happen. So I really loved this book. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars because my only complaint about it was the beginning was a little bit weak. All of the stuff leading up to the actual point was a little bit weak. So if that had been stronger, this would have been a 5 out of 5 stars because this book was awesome. Review to come. The next book that I read in June was All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I'm gonna just repeat the same thing that I repeated with Shadow of the Wind. I respect historical fiction. I've tried multiple times, and while I was reading this, I was aware I should be loving this book. I was aware of how brilliant this book is, and I couldn't connect to a single character at all. This book just, I feel so bad because my grandmother gave me her copy to read, and inside, my grandma likes to mark her books with how many stars she gives them with little stickers, and she has 6 stars here because she enjoyed it so much. It went off the traditional 5-star rating. And so I really wanted to love this book and be able to tell her how much I loved it, and I just didn't. It took me a really long time to read because I couldn't push myself through it. This book is a World War II historical fiction book. It switches back and forth between the stories of 2 characters, a girl named Marie-Laure, who's Parisian, and a boy named Werner, who is German. And it's just about World War II and how their paths cross. You can see how their paths would cross, and you can see how they would connect, and Marie-Laure is running, and Werner is slowly becoming a part of the German army because he's really, really smart, and Marie-Laure is blind, which is really interesting, and that's a cool thing, and I don't know. I wish I could have liked this book. I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars because I just couldn't connect to anything. I'm sorry. The last Buffy comic that I read in June was issue 3, Wolves at the Gate. This one was fantastic. This was like those episodes of Buffy where they're suddenly funny again and you get a really lighthearted one. I laughed out loud multiple times reading this. The characters were really fun and sharp again, and I enjoyed seeing them be loose again and not being so worried about everything all the time. Not to say that this did not get dark and angsty, because it did. It took a very sharp, dark turn. But I really, really liked this one, and after the second one, this got me way more excited to read the other ones, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. And finally, the last book that I read in June was Phantoms by Dean Koontz. This was my very first ever Dean Koontz book that I was not planning on reading this month, but I visited a friend at the beginning of the month, and he shoved this at me and said, please read my favorite Dean Koontz book. And I was like, okay, Brian, I'll read your favorite Dean Koontz book. And I did, and you know what? I didn't think I was gonna love this book, and I loved this book, okay? So this is a horror novel, and it is about this girl and her sister, and her little sister is moving in with her, and they drive back to the small town in California where she lives, and they find that everyone in the town is either missing or dead, and not just like dead under really suspicious circumstances. They find the bodies and they're frozen with these grotesque screams of horror on their face, or they'll find like hands still clutching a rolling pin, and it's really scary, and so they get people to come and help, but they think that something supernatural has killed everybody. This book was terrifying. Do you remember that thing earlier where I said I wasn't scared of books? I was terrified of this book. I was legitimately frightened of it. On multiple occasions, I would go to sleep, and every now and then my eyes would just fly open because I'd be like, yeah, I'd remember a scene from this book. This was my first Dean Koontz. It won't be my last. I'm definitely going to look out for some of his other stuff now because I adored reading this, and I read it really quickly. I read like the last half of it in one straight shot because this was just a really great book. This was my other 5 out of 5 stars for the month. So I had 2 to begin and end the month with. So those are the books that I read in June. I read a lot of books in June. I feel really great about it. I don't know if I'll do that well in July. Hopefully I will. That'd be great if I did that well in July. I'd be so ahead of the game. In comments, please let me know what books you read in June, what stuff you liked the most. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful July, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!